Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I'm going to continue my Ghostbusters movie reviews today, and this is the film that came out about 5 years later after the 2016 travesty of a remake called Ghostbusters Afterlife in 2021. This film is about 2 hours long, and it's directed by the son of Ivan Reitman, the original director of the first two movies, and who produced, I believe, that 2016 film as well, Jason Reitman. Now, Jason Reitman, he had done a lot of films like Juno. I think he did Whiplash, if I remember correctly. This is different from what he is used to doing, I believe. The rumor is that Ivan Reitman was on set with him every day, basically working with him kind of directly, maybe even unpaid as far as I know. But that's kind of interesting because the kind of film this is versus what it should have been. Because I have a lot to say about Afterlife, not being a big Ghostbusters fan. I've heard a lot of things from my friends who are, like Horror FFA. I've heard a lot of things from other people, and then some observations I have about the franchise that I've restated again and again in previous reviews. Number one, Ghostbusters to me, after the original film, which I do consider to be a horror comedy, kind of dissipates away from that because of the cartoons, because of the Halloween costumes for children, and the toys, and so on and so on. By the time Ghostbusters 2 came out in '89, it had become a children's franchise at that point, in my opinion. And then going on from there, it's maintained that. The 2016 film is a horrible film that everybody hates. I don't know who its audience is supposed to be, aside from SNL fans, which they don't exist. So I don't really know what to say about Afterlife. When Afterlife came out, it seemed fairly well received. It seemed like a lot of people really liked it, and then I never heard about it ever again. Haven't heard a single person talk about it in years. And again, it seems like the hardcore fans were kind of disappointed with this film, and I understand why, because it doesn't feel like a Ghostbusters movie at all, aside from some certain elements that come in later on in the movie. It doesn't really have much of that, aside from proton packs, cameos, the car, which is a newer version of the car, sort of, but it's basically the car. What is that car called? I can never remember. Anyway, Ghostbusters Afterlife basically is about a family of three. We follow the youngest daughter in the family, played by McKenna Grace from the Haunting of Hill House TV show, which she was excellent in. This little girl's going to go places. She is incredible here. After her grandfather dies, she, her mom, who is a single mom, and her older brother, played by Finn Wolfhard, who has absolutely nothing to do in this movie, move to the house in the middle of nowhere in a farmland area, very rural. I can't say that word well, but who cares? They move out to this house that used to be her grandfather's house, and she begins to find out that her grandfather was a Ghostbuster named Egon Spangler. Yes, everybody already knows about that. If you watch the first 5 minutes of the film, you already tell. We have a silhouetted Harold Ramis, and Harold Ramis had passed away in like 2014. This movie right here never paid tribute to him, despite it coming out less than 2 years after he had passed. But Afterlife is really about Harold Ramis, and a lot of love towards him, being one of the creators of Ghostbusters. Not only one of the stars, but one of the creators, because he wrote those first two films with Mr. Dan Aykroyd. So while they're there, a lot of this is focused around McKenna Grace, who basically is doing her best Harold Ramis impersonation, and she is wonderful at it. This is where it maintains this idea of being a children's franchise. This is a girl that's not even a teenager yet. Her brother, Finn Wolfhard, is, but he's barely in the film. We follow McKenna Grace and kind of this other kid that she becomes friends with named Podcast, who I thought was really fun. I really liked him, too. I think he was pretty funny as comedic relief. And they begin to investigate some of the weird haunting stuff in this town that may be part of what took her grandfather. That's really all I want to tell you about this plot. Now, I watched this film finally around Christmas time. I had been waiting off forever to see it, then I forgot about it, and I did not go to the theaters to see this or anything, and I found out that Frozen Empire, which is Ghostbusters 5, the direct sequel to this movie, is coming out in March, and I was hoping that would be hopefully good. I have this feeling that movie's gonna suck. I don't know what it is about it that rubs me the wrong way, but there's just something about it that just, I don't know. I hope it's good, though. This movie is very much going to be focused around this couple of kids, and Finn Wolfhard sometimes, going on their little adventures. There's a lot of action in here once it takes off. The biggest issues for me, and this is where it really gets into the nitty-gritty, it steals basically everything from the original film. It's almost an entire remake of that original film, again, after 2016. People call this a requel. That's fair. But there's a lot of this film that I would say, like, a good 70% of this movie is just the original film done all over again and not in New York City, which is the next sin. New York City was the lifeblood of the Ghostbusters franchise, in my personal opinion. That personality, that dry, snobbish, I don't like you, stranger tone is very New York City. That's what makes that first two couple of films really connect and work with a lot of people, I think, because the people who live in New York City, or just New York in general, or just big cities in general, understand the perspective and the feeling of that type of tone and that snobbery, if you will. No offense, but it's true. That's what works about those first two films. When you take Ghostbusters and put it into farmland, you might as well call it a spin-off like Creed and call it something else. I don't know what you call it. Barn Busters? I don't know. Whatever we could call the film. And I think it would have been more suitable, more accepted, you know? But the straight-out remake nature of this film and trying to disguise that as a requel is very weird, especially if Ivan Reitman was on set and you had so many cameo people that were in here that were also on set that should have known better and should have said something. But again, we could have had Ghostbusters 3 forever ago before the video game was made, but I blame Bill Murray because of his bullshit. So, the film itself, aside from those issues and aside from a lot of CGI, basically no practical effects as far as I could tell, the film is fairly decent. I actually like it. I think it's above average for what I was expecting it to be. Again, I just kind of rented this around Christmas time when I was on vacation and I finally had not been sick anymore and I could just kind of understand what I was looking at. I wasn't having fever dreams and shit anymore like my wife and I had with that flu we caught. I was watching this and was really impressed with what I was seeing. It took way too long to get to the ghost busting. It really did. It took like 50 minutes to get there in this 2-hour-long movie. The biggest issue that I have with that is that the original film I don't even think was as long as this. I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes. It took like 15 minutes to get all three of the Ghostbusters set up in that film. Harold Ramis, Dan Aykroyd, and Bill Murray, and eventually Ernie Hudson within the next half hour or so. In the first 15 minutes, you had them ready to go. You understood their personalities, what they were like. You understood that Bill Murray was a sneaky, sleazy scumball, you know? You knew all of that 15 minutes in. Movies nowadays have this mentality that they need to sit around forever to try to develop that, and there's just no excuse in my opinion. Despite Ivan Reitman and so many other people being involved that were involved in the original films, despite Jason Reitman, who was a very good character guy, being involved here, I don't know if this is a studio issue or what, but it just took too long to get to where we needed to go for ghostbusting. And the general humor, the general jokes, weren't anything like the original Ghostbusters films. It's not a dry humor at all. It has almost this MCU flair to it, and if you like that, it'll be up your alley. I don't mind that when it's well done, and I think this film mostly does it well. It's classic MCU humor, not new MCU humor. That's fair, I think. I think it's very fair. That kind of was the beginning of the curse of Hollywood, so, you know. But Afterlife, I think, gets a lot right. Despite it using so much CGI, the action set pieces are really good when they're there. I just wish it wasn't such a ripoff of the original film. I wish we had a brand new movie that had new villains, and hopefully Frozen Empire gets that right. This movie had too much wrong to be a great movie, but I do think it is a good movie overall in case you want to see something worthwhile. Now, the mom also has a subplot in here where she starts to fall for the summer school teacher that works at McKenna Gray's school, played by Paul Rudd, who is basically playing Paul Rudd. I love Paul Rudd. He's Ant-Man. He's a great actor. I love him in Halloween 6. He's horrible in it, but I love him in it. Like, I love Paul Rudd in general. But he has nothing to do here either. He's trying, but he's just a love interest, basically. This movie doesn't get a lot right, that's what I'm saying. It's good, but it doesn't get a lot right, and I think that's fair to criticize it for. The characters are not the most strong. The mom, I can't stand. Finn Wolfhard is annoying. He's just a dumb teenager. I feel bad for him. This was a paycheck, and I don't blame him at all. Paul Rudd is trying. He's trying to make it funny. McKenna Grace is the reason to be here, in my honest opinion, because she is the person you get the most screen time of. And podcast, the kid playing him, is good, like I said. But that's about it. Most of the writing are focused on those two kids. And again, I hope Frozen Empire will improve that, because it needs to, big time. Aside from that, the cinematography on the film is very well done, especially in the action set piece you probably saw from the trailer back in the day of the Ghostmobile, whatever you call it, Ecto-1. Ecto-1, that's what it's called, which is great. I love the chase scene downtown in the middle of the small town area. That stuff was super high ante. I really loved it. I thought it was a good time in that general sense. But again, it took like an hour in this film to get there. There's almost nothing happening most of the time, aside from some interesting stuff involving McKenna Grace and the ghost of her grandfather, who we really don't see. We just kind of have him possessing like a lamp and moving a lamp here and there to kind of point her into clues about who she is, what her legacy is, so on and so on. I liked all that stuff, I respected all that stuff, but the film still feels unbalanced because of the humor, because of so many issues in this movie that are not very Ghostbusters-like. If you're a hardcore Ghostbusters fan, I would not be surprised that you didn't like this movie. If you haven't seen it yet and you are a big Ghostbusters fan, it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say down below if you happen to watch the film based on my recommendation. It's obviously better than 2016, but I would argue something that a lot of Ghostbusters fans would not argue. I think this is better than Ghostbusters 2. It might even be my personal favorite Ghostbusters film because I'm not a big obsessee over the previous films, but the original film is way more creative. It gets a lot more correct, and frankly, because I watched this film first before I did this whole marathon about a month ago, of watching all of these back to back, I liked this one the most until I rewatched the original 84 film that I don't watch very often. I may have seen it 3 or 4 times in my whole lifetime. Of the span of almost 30 years, I think I've seen it maybe 4 times. It made me realize when I rewatched 84 that this movie, Afterlife, is not as good as I thought it was. You know what I mean? It's sad to say that. I don't even own a copy yet of it, but when I do, I probably won't rewatch this very often either. It has more of my modern sentiments of what I like in modern film. It's not annoying, it's not political, it's nothing like that. It's well done for what it is. But what it is not what everybody wanted, and that kind of includes me, I guess, to an extent, as I rewatch these movies, despite there being so many misses in the whole series. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about Ghostbusters Afterlife. If I had to rate the film on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it kind of a weak 4 out of 5 stars. That's still pretty high, but it's not like I loved this movie or anything. It just really surprised me how much I enjoyed it. It was a good time to watch. I just wish it was a little bit quicker paced, because this film doesn't have the excuse to take as long to set things up as it does, being a Ghostbusters movie. And the 2016 film has that issue too. Anyway, have you seen it? What do you think about it? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and comments down below about the movie. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know what you think about my review. Is it fair? Are you excited for Frozen Empire? You guys who are big Ghostbusters fans, I'd love to hear all that down below too. And again, this being the current last video I can make until Frozen Empire. Once Frozen Empire comes out, this is a big enough franchise that I think people will care how I rank these movies, so I probably will do a ranking video at that point. Hopefully you'll tune in for that too, in case you want to. Thank you all for watching, guys. God bless you all. Week 4 out of 5 stars, like I said, and that's what Ghostbusters Afterlife deserves, in my opinion, because of all the shit that it steals. Still decent, though. Definitely a recommendation for me. Thank you all, God bless you, and goodbye.